Ever since Tom Tipper got his van back after Percy crushed his bike, Percy was glad to be pulling his post train again, and would often tell tales about it to Harold the helicopter. James, however, was not impressed. Silly little engine, he said. He needs to look where he's going. Thomas smiled. It was only an accident, James, he reminded. Percy was trying to save Tom Tipper's van from being scrapped, and if it wasn't for him, Tom would have had to take a day off from his post runs. Scoffed James. Anyway, said Thomas, I must pick my passengers at Elsbridge station, and he chuffed away, but James was still cross. He continued to grumble while shunting, and even blamed Percy for the incident. Bike crusher, James would say. It's not fair, he complained to Gordon. Percy is just too clumsy to handle the post train. Why can't Tubby or Duck help him? Because Thomas is the one who helps Percy. There's Gordon as he puffed away with his coaches. Despicable, James complained to Duck and Boko. I get to do all the shunting in the yards while Percy does all his jobs with the post train. Duck chuckled. Well, James, there are two ways of doing things. The Great Western way or the wrong way. I'm Great Western and don't we coward, scoffed James. Why do I have to be the one to do the shunting? Because Boko had this. You're a mixed traffic engine. You can pull and shunt both trucks and coaches. But you should now that trucks can be troublesome to engines like you. I mean, you did have two accidents with them, did you? Rubbish, said James. I know how to handle trucks better than Edward. Well, be careful, said Boko. There's a thick fog coming this evening and you don't want to have another accident to you. James just moaned as he chuffed away crossly. That James will never learn sense, sighed Boko. Oh, he will say Duck when he gets what's coming to him. Later Duck went to see to be in the yards. James has been boastful to me 2 times. Once when I first came to Soda, and when the fat controller gave Gordon a rest from the actress. Duck considered. IQ an engine called King James. He worked on the Great Western Railway. King James the First he says he was, but he never boast or brag anyone about. To my side. Well, I hope James learns his lesson, but he didn't. Now when soon the thaw came, James had to take a goods train to the harbour, and he didn't look happy. Or shunt here, shunt there, groaned James. That's all I ever do. The trucks could see that James was cross, so they decided to be quiet. Soon, James had his goods train arranged. I wish I was back to pulling coaches again, he groaned. All clear, James, said the god. Away we go, and so James set off for the harbour. Get a move on you, he shouted. As James shot towards the harbour, he continued to complain about the trucks. Trucks indeed, he said. I'll show them who's good at handling trucks. Steady, Bob, called his driver, but James wouldn't listen. Meanwhile, Gordon was collecting his passengers at Edward Station. When James shoved past, coming through, he shouted while wheezing steam at Gordon. Show off, Gordon called out, but James didn't care. He continued on his way. James wanted to bang and bump the trucks hard, but he knew that if he did, then they will get him into an accident. So he did his best to be gentle with them. As the fog became thicker, it made it hard for James to look where he was going. If only I could see better, he thought, but still he kept on going. James was still cross as he chuffed to the harbour. I wish I could think of some way to pay Percy out, he thought, but he didn't. Now how? Up ahead was the station on the mainland where many mainland engines come and visit. During the fog, the engines whistled to let the signalman they are ready so that he could switch the points. Henry was looking forward to his next train. Not long now, he said. Then James shoved towards the station. The signalman could see him through the fog. Oh no, he cried, James can't run on that line. The points are thrown because of the fogs. So he turned the signal red. James didn't. Now I was red until he saw that the points wouldn't switch. Look out, he shouted. James' driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. James hit the points with a thump, causing his trucks to crash off the tracks. Oh dear, groaned James. When the workmen came to clear up the mess, James became worried. The fat controller will be cross with me, he thought. And he was. I'm very disappointed in you, James, he said. Not only were you mean to Percy, but you've also ruined the boats on the mainland. You shall stay in the shed until I can trust you again. You sighed James. He felt very ashamed. When the fog cleared, James started grumbling to Edward. First Percy has an accident, then I have one. Edward laughed. Don't be mad, James. It was only an accident, and besides you'll still be a mixed traffic engine like me and Henry. Rubbish, groaned James. The fat controller lets me stay in the shed because of the mistakes I make. But whichever you do, smiled Edward, you'll still be the best red engine ever. This made James feel much better. You're right, Edward, he said. I'm sorry I was rude to Percy about his bike accident. That's all right, said Edward. James felt very proud to be the brightest red engine on Soda.